Personal power, self-esteem, adaptability and resilience. When I was growing up, I came from an era where you didn't get very much praise. In actual fact, it was the complete opposite. And I remember one night, I was at an awards night. I was one of those high-achieving kids, you know, that would study all the time and get lots of awards. You know, I just loved learning. So it was an awards night. I was, I think, about 16, and my dad and my mum came. It was a really rare time that my dad was there. And I won 4 awards for coming first in class. Anyway, we were on the way home, and I'm like beaming, so happy with my books, you know, and my dad says, darling, in his lovely accent, when I was a young boy, I used to have to bring a wheelbarrow to carry all my awards. Now, at the time, now I can laugh, but at the time that was so heartbreaking. I was like, what is a girl got to do to get his acknowledgement? So, I tell you this story only for one reason, and that is the way you were parented influences the way you parent. And you might yourself say, how many times have you said, I'm never going to be like my mother or my father, and then you hear the words coming out and you go, I'm just like my mother or I'm just like my father. Yes? Okay. Now generally if there's extremes in parenting like that, which I experienced, you either go all the way with that or you go the whole other way. You just like seriously rebel. So no matter what my child did, I was like, yay, that's so good, you're the best, smartest kid in the whole wide world. And all he did was go like, hi. So I went the opposite way, and I would praise anything and everything that he did. One day, he picked up one of his paintings and he said to me, is this any good? Do you love this, Mummy? And in that moment, I realised what I've done. I've created a praise junkie. I've created a child who is so externally referenced, who's just waiting for me to say what wonderful things he's going to do next. So of course I went, okay, this isn't good. Back to the books over there, and I got into the psychology and tried to understand more about self-esteem, resilience, and external validation versus internal validation. And I found a wealth of knowledge, and I found Dr. Michael Hall. And he's the one that writes in Inspired Children, and he talks about the difference between self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-efficacy, and they're really, really important. So one of the things that I suggest parents do in the Inspired Children program is actually explain the difference to children, because if you understand it yourself and you explain it to children, they can really grasp what self-esteem is and really have personal power. Now, most people confuse self-confidence with self-esteem. And that's where this problem comes with parents going, oh, that's fabulous, that's really good. If I praise you, then you're going to think you're good. And if you think you're good, then you're going to have good self-esteem. It actually doesn't work that way at all, as you can hear by my example, yes? Self-esteem is a self-appraisal. It is a self-judgment. It does not come from outside, from another human being. It is a self-judgment. So now, whenever my son says, do you love this, Mummy? I say, honey, do you love this? And he usually goes, yeah, I do love this. I go, that's great. Did you enjoy doing it? I really enjoyed doing it. Do you think you'd like to do it again? I would like to do it again. Now, if he still remembers to ask me if I love it, I answer him. But at this point in time, he's appraised it himself. He loves it, he loved doing it, and he's going to do more about it. My opinion's kind of irrelevant at this point in time. He has self-esteemed. Now, with self-esteem, if you can keep getting that internal reference with your child, especially when they're young, you might find that you're not going to get them so much looking out to you to tell you things. Now, I'm not suggesting that you want a child to be only self-referenced. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is if you start with that self-reference, as they get older and are able to take more in, you can start to say, it's really good that you like your work, and that's really good that you enjoyed it. Would you like somebody else's opinion on that to integrate with what you've already done? So you might find someone might know a bit more about colours than you do, or a little bit more information than you do, and you might like to ask them for a bit of assistance. So can you see how if they start from a solid base of self-appraisal, they can then look outside to get more information, to get feedback on their work, but they started from an internal reference, not an external. Now, a lot of people say they want their children to be confident. They want to have self-confidence. Well, I tell you that I want my child to have low self-confidence and high self-confidence, and I'll tell you why. Self-confidence is all about the doing. And if you can explain that to your child, then that's a really important learning. If you've never done something before and you're really confident about it, you're really setting yourself up for disaster. So, for example, you give your child a new bike. They've never sat on a bike before, but of course I can ride a bike. So they get on the biggest hill they can find and straight into a tree. So that's why we want them to be able to assess very well what they're confident in, self-confident about, and what they're not so confident about, what they've got low confidence in. So if that child said, well, I've never ridden a bike before, maybe you better hold it first before I start to learn. I'm really not very confident about doing this thing. Then that's a very good appraisal. So you want your child to be able to appraise very well whether they have low self-confidence or whether they have high self-confidence. And that will depend upon how much experience and learning they've got in that particular activity. Now that's very different to self-esteem. Self-esteem has nothing to do with doing. Self-esteem is about being. Now, do you remember when your child was tiny in your arms and you took one look? Wasn't it the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life? Wasn't it incredible? Like you felt so fulfilled? It was like a miracle. It was like amazing. And what were they doing? Nothing. They were just looking at you like that. There was no doing happening. Agreed? Maybe after a few months you got a smile and that was amazing. But it's the being that matters, and that is what self-esteem is. Every single one of you, every single child, every single person on the planet has the right to good self-esteem. Has nothing to do with what you do, how you look, what you might be in the world. It is the fact that you exist. I mean, look, we're amazing. We've got hair and eyes, we can walk, we can talk, we can think, we can inspire. Is that not enough to have good self-esteem? So that's the message I hope that you will take home with you and to your children, that you already have that. You already have the right to good self-esteem. That is who you are, just because you are. But on the other hand, let's look at self-confidence, a whole different ballgame. That's where we can have those varying scales. And so if a child, says to you, oh, look, I'm so dumb, you can unpack it and say, sweetie, let's look at this. What do you mean you're dumb? Well, I can't do this maths problem. Oh, you can't do a maths problem. Okay, so we've made you all dumb because you can't do a maths problem. Can you see how you can unpick it then? So you've forgotten that you've got eyes and ears and nose and you can run and that you can actually learn this. You've forgotten that bit, have you? Okay, so can you see how you can now take the doing away from the being? And you can avoid things like saying, good boy, good girl. They're always good boys and good girls. Not for what they're doing, but for who they are. Do you see what I mean? We encourage them to be doers, not beers, by saying, good boy, good girl, well done, that's fabulous. But what about the fact that you just exist? Is that not enough for you to be amazing? So that's the difference I'd like to, share with you today that I learned. So now I can always separate Cameron's actions from himself. So he's always a good boy because he's amazing. He's a unique being that I don't even know what he's going to create in the world. So that's personal power. That's just one aspect of it that I'd like to share. And I mean, I've got a million things I'd love to share, but I'll keep moving so I can give you at least an example from each one of the categories that you can take away. Does everyone feel okay that they've got something to take away from personal power at this point in time?